Apologize for the brief interruption. I had a very unexpected and unseasonable power outage here at my home in New Hampshire in June. I do not know why. But as far as I know, things should be proceeding merrily along from here. So we're just going to pick right up where we left off. And fortunately, where we left off was me in the middle of the sentence with which I was moving to introduce our segue back into our main topic, which, Phil, is the music. So, Phil, first, just kind of tell us about the compositions this year and the process. I know there have been different times in years past when you've been collaborating with different musicians and stuff. Just would love to hear more about the whole, the kind of the picture of the process, what's been going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, very much a solo effort this year. As you know, everyone knows last year was pretty much a musical,
Right.
so which needed a lot of extra
Right.
people
All hands on
involved.
deck last year.
Yeah, last season, and so people were volunteering things, and singing, and doing wonderful stuff. This year has been a little bit different. I've been sort of working more alone, but I've really been enraptured by the scripts, and the scripts I often find are a great source of inspiration for me, and especially when that first script of Alana's came out of episode one.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many gems in there. So I've done that as the scripts have come out. I've sort of kept track of that. So what you'll find is there are quite a few. Quite a few of them are based directly on the script. So a bit of warning before we go into them to everyone that there is the text from the scripts in the videos.
Mm-hmm.
It's not accessible, unfortunately. It just appears as part of the image. But if it's too much, if it's too much to read, don't worry about it. Just concentrate on listening to the music. Hopefully, the images will get the story across. But at the same time, there are a few that are brand new themes for this season. The Galadriel storyline going east of the Misty Mountains required a new theme for the Sooth Veradine. So that's what I've done there. And some of the other ones, the Lament for Azaghal is brand new. That'll be interesting to talk about when we get there. But a lot of what I've done this year is weaving existing themes into the narrative. So, and it's not just this person's on screen and so their theme plays, but it's more to do with like that sort of gives you the skeleton, the backbone of what's there. The music itself is actually in the tone. The instruments being used is telling the main story of what we're hoping people will feel during this season, and hopefully there will be some tears.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely the sad music season. But
Another thing that I have concentrated on is images. As you know, I try and find appropriate images, and particularly when I'm trying to write for a scene, the images are very specific for what is going on in that scene. So I mine the Tolkien community as much as I can for appropriate images, but there just aren't the sheer variety of images that I'm after. So people will notice that I have relied on some AI artwork. And actually for a little while I had a gentleman from China, I believe, who was assisting with some artwork. He was posting on an art site that I regularly go to, and I can tell I usually tell when they're AI art, and I looked and said, oh, that's AI art, but that's very specific Tolkien image of a specific scene.
Right.
How on earth did he get that? So I've been collaborating with him. He particularly had a lot of input into the laughter of Lalaith, and I've got some tips from him. So all I try and do with the imagery is I'm just storyboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no consistency of characters from one image to another. They look different because AI is not that smart. And yeah, I'm happy for you to pick up all the ridiculous things that the that have been created in particular images. There are some really weird things,
Yes.
but that's what I'm trying to get across. So if people are sort of saying, "Oh, that image doesn't really gel with me," it's like, just get in the spirit of things. This is just trying to give you an indication, a visual indication of how the story is progressing.
Yeah,
What a,
it's one of the things I think has always been interesting about your presentation of the videos for the music is that, of course, it's on the one hand we want to feature the music, and so to, you know, to some extent, like, the images don't matter at all, right? I mean, it's really it's about the music, but at the same time, you're writing the music. This isn't static music, right? This isn't music that is designed just to be heard, and so if it doesn't give you any sense of how it accompanies and would flow with the scenes, it fails to convey the real effect that you're doing. I mean, you have to know a movie pretty well to be able to really just listen to the soundtrack, you know, out of context and really get what it's doing and how it's working, right? You can appreciate it simply as a piece of music, but again, that's only a portion of what it's actually accomplishing and what it's actually attempting to do. And so anyway, so I always, I like how that works, but of course we understand the limitations, since this is in fact an imaginary adaptation, and we cannot indeed deliver to you footage that you're, you know, that you're matching your compositions to. We're doing the best we can. So
Yeah, and look, my compositions are getting more complex as well. If you go back to what I was composing in season one, you will probably hear that what I'm composing now is so much more complex to that stage. And so as my ability to write more complex pieces has increased, the technology that I'm using has also increased. So I'm actually taking longer to write a piece, but it's actually shorter time for me to produce it. I'm not spending as much time trolling through images, image galleries online. I'm trying to spend more time with the music, and the software that I use had some recent excellent upgrades. So rather than running each instrument through a virtual orchestra, the virtual orchestra is part of the software now, and I just produce, like, I can just say export and bang, everything comes out.
nice.
Yeah. So
It's
there have
always
been
it's
amazing.
it's always delightful when the upgrade of software actually helps in that sort of way.
It
Yes.
does, it does.
Good.
And look, and another thing to explain to people if they're not familiar with this, this is what a real composer would call this music is what a real composer would call just a demo. Like they're writing software, sorry, they're writing music with software, and they're using virtual instruments to create. This is what it's likely to sound like, but between there and actual production, actually interesting, you go to Bear McCreary's blog, his latest blog is all about music production. But from that demo to getting a real orchestra in a studio and recording it, there's still a world of difference. So I had to explain to someone on a recent video comment that no musicians were harmed in the making of this video.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Cool. Someday, Phil, it is like, you know, it's on my bucket list to hear a SilmFilm composition, one of your SilmFilm compositions performed by an orchestra. Like that's that's a bucket list item right there.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
Awesome.
I don't know how prestigious an orchestra will be.
Hey.
We'll see. Any orchestra is a good orchestra.
It reminds me of on one of my moot flights recently, I was sharing the airplane with the entire Boston Pops Symphony Orchestra. It was on my plane, which was awkward, by the way, because they had really oddly shaped carry-ons, and so the bins were like full in unusual ways. But it was kind of fun. So anyway, I was kind of, you know,
It almost sounds like that scene in Home Alone where the mother joined the Oompa band in the back of the John Candy Oompa
Right.
band in the back of the truck.
Right, exactly. All right. Let us move to the first piece. So the first piece you have called The Race.
Exactly. Yes, so this is based directly on the opening scene of episode 1 of this season. And it just captured me, just the way that the script team brought us into the story. Like, they didn't just start with the action. It was a slow introduction, and that introduction itself actually gives us an idea of like when the episode is actually set, because as you've talked about before, episode 1 is a bit of a flashback. It's before Byrne and Luthien or Luthien and Huan have destroyed Sauron's fortress, and so at this so it was clear in that opening shot that we need to establish Sauron's still in control of Taron-Galhoth. So yeah, all that establishing shot. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this, because the race between Hurin, Huor, and Hamdir was really light-hearted. So I had a lot of fun with the orchestration, making it into this very light-hearted piece. Once you actually got down on the ground, it became very, very light-hearted. But at the end of the race, I sort of cut it, because the scene went on to, let's go for serious talks with the leader of the Haladin, and moved into a different feel altogether. So that was where I started, and that was where I had inspiration. I can see from the image there of our PowerPoint, this is an indication of how I've used. I don't think this piece of music has any original themes.
Right.
So this is all using themes that currently that I've already written. The music itself is actually original, because it's never been presented in this particular way. So just to remind people, it opens with Manway's theme, and he's associated with the eagles. So every time we see eagles, we're going to hear Manway's theme. You'll actually hear in the background of that a little ba-da-ba-bum, which is Varda's theme. And my intention at this point was just like possibly Manway and Varda are actually standing on Taniquetil and observing this at this time. And that it's not just Manway, but Varda's helping him to see further.
Exactly. Thinking about that passage where it describes when Varda is beside him, then absolutely. Yeah, no, that's cool. So you're beginning not only with the reference to the eagles, but with the implication, essentially, that the Valar, Manwë and Varda in particular, are looking out for these boys, and that's going to be part of this story.
Yes.
The episode 1 story. Okay, cool.
Exactly. As the eagle moves over Tol Sirion, I've introduced Myron's theme there. Bum ba da bum, bum ba da bum, and then I've got that next video, Bulldog, Leader of Orcs. That's really, I haven't got Bulldog's theme in there, but I've got that. That was where I introduced the orc motif. So we get the orc motif, which is the corruption of the Elvish 3 notes.
Yes.
But also Melkor's theme is added into Melkor's triad. Melkor's triad thrown into the mix there, because like it's not identified. We don't actually see Sauron there, but we know that it is Melkor's. And then as the eagle moves on and flies down the River Sirion, we get Ulmo's theme to remind us.
Sirion. Yeah.
Yep. Every time we see the Sirion, we're going to hear Ulmo's theme again. And then when the scene actually settles in Brethil, we get the House of Halath theme. And those people who watch Other Minds and Hands should recognise the opening music from Other Minds and Hands in this bit here. Yeah. And then of course there is then the interplay with the House of Hador theme. So for instance, the House of Halath theme is something like that, whereas Hador theme is something like that. But all human themes start with that 1/5 leap initially. Okay. And then we just get that interplay between those two House of Halath theme and House of Hador theme throughout the race as they jostle between each other. And hopefully in the imagery, people can actually recognise some very specific things that happened within the script. It's amazing when you put something into an AI, a prompt to produce an AI piece of artwork. It's amazing the detail they pick up, but it's amazing the huge mistakes that it also makes.
Yes.
Now, this one, after I'd released this, it's sort of like I always look at how I'll always look at the statistics on YouTube to say like how are people engaging with it. So for this one, I actually also released a short. This is the first time I've actually released a YouTube short, and because people weren't getting through like the first minute. And that's all with the eagle gliding down the valley. It's like you didn't get to any exciting music, so I produced a short which basically has the Tol Sirion fortress, and it's really sort of it's to try and get people engaged. So I thought we'd sort of begin with that and just sort of and I think it's also a really good. I mean, if you want to, you can use it as an ad for SilmFilm.
Right. Exactly. All right, so we'll start with that short, the teaser short.
Yep, the one that says I think Tol Sirion on it.
It's fun. And since it's a short, it goes back to the beginning and starts playing again. Cool.
Exactly. They're a bit frustrating, but yeah, I just thought, just a nice taster to see, like, this is the sort of thing that you're going to get if I listen to my music, but it's really good if people stick with it.
Yeah.
Because they're actually listening to a piece of music. They're not actually just getting an opinion on something.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, let's listen to the whole piece. Oh, and I should apologize at the beginning. I had it set up so that I had pre-screened them all for ads, but since my entire computer rebooted when my power went out, I probably lost that advantage. So if I get ads, I apologize, and I'll try to fix that. I'll try to mute it. But anyway, Don't need to subject y'all to advertising. Okay. Let's go. That was really fun. You were talking about how things have changed since earlier seasons. Well, it's now starting to play something else random. One of the things I can't remember, the compositions that you're doing, like actually like flowing to accompany a scene in this way. Like it's so much more dramatic, right? Dramatic rather than thematic, merely thematic, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. They started slowly. I had a smattering. I think I
In
did the
some
scene
six for
of the
sure.
birth of the
In
two
some six,
trees. I
yeah. Oh, yeah.
did the rising
Right.
rising of
Yeah.
the sun and the hiding of Valinor.
Hmm.
But yeah, they were few and far between. And it was mostly that I was just like, look, this is the theme. As I said, I'm just having so much fun weaving all these themes together.
But even those, like the hiding of Valinor, for instance, that's still like that. There was drama in that, like there was development, right, of like the focus of the themes and what the music was covering. But even that is still more conceptual than like following the action of people, on screen performing actions, if you see what I mean. Like there's something, this is just so much closer to the ground than those earlier compositions. Cause something like The Darkening of Valinor, or The Hiding of Valinor, or something like that, The Two Trees, is still like, it was covering a range of ideas, and there was a narrative progression to the way that those ideas were covered. But still, that's not the same thing as like, this is like you could almost do like one of Jordan Rennell's soundscapes with this, like, read the script aloud and play that, play your, that in the background and time it up. Like
that's an idea for Myth Moot.
Yeah. Jordan's going to be there.
I actually was thinking that there might be times where it might behoove us in our presentation of the various pieces of Húrin and Morwen's story to play some of this music, particularly stuff like the Laughter of Lalaith.
Yeah,
was something I had in mind. I noticed there was near the beginning, as you were beginning to transition from the Eagles, you started to do that build. There was it felt very Shorian. Right, like it's very much like dun 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 that one. Yeah, it reminded me of that quite a bit.
Right.
Which was
nice.
Yeah.
And I've listened to so many soundtracks, and you sort of get to know the feel of like, how do I transition this piece of music into a completely different piece of music? Can be challenging at times, but this one flowed really well. And it's sometimes just about having that chord progression to leave you hanging, and then this thing can come in underneath, and you're taken away by that.
Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah, no, very cool. I was, it's also one of the other things that I love about how the familiar themes that we've heard from sometimes many seasons ago, sometimes just last season. One of the things that's always fun about hearing those familiar themes being brought together in a new way like this is just kind of like a new appreciation for a theme that I've heard before. The orc theme was I was just struck again by how much I love that. On the one hand, the firm and like, militaristic beat of it, but then like the syncopated beats that make it all feel very, kind of chaotic and not quite right is I that effect I really love. And again, just placing that theme in the context of, coming from the like sort of Manwë dominated opening, right? And then of course moving on to the much more kind of fun and lighthearted human music at the end. It particularly stood out how both how stark and martial and sort of disturbing the orc music is. So that was really fun.
Yeah. And I as I said, I've experimented with a lot more range of instrumentation as well. A lot of percussion in that one, and even in when we got to the Forest of Brethil, that really bouncy bum 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 bum, which sounds very Shire-like,
right.
But it's like pizzicato on the like plucking of those strings, bum 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 bum, bum. So there's technique comes into it as well, and so I'm learning more and more about technique and how they can be used effectively.
Well, that is fun. Cool. All right, so the next one is Enter the Perilous Realm. Is that still?
Yes.
So what are you?
Episode 1.
Yeah, episode 1. We're still.
My work is easy because I use
ClickUp.
ClickUp.
Got an ad here, so hang on a second.
Yep.
Okay, hang on. So in the meantime, let me advance the slide here. Actually, I want to do this a slightly different way this time.
Yep.
Instead of talking through the themes and everything in advance.
Yep.
Before we listen to it, talk about the the story context and like this sort of the story information, the kind of context that we would get, right? Hearing it, both leading up to hearing it in the episode, and of course the kind of visual cues that we would be getting during the episode and everything, so that we can kind of fit that in. And then after we listen to it, we can go through and look at the relationship with the specific themes and stuff that you're working with.
Yep.
So this is Gondolin, you say? The entrance to Gondolin?
Yes, yeah, the entrance to Gondolin. So it involves the entire assault against the orcs that are building the bridges and moving their way down into Beleriand. And through through that assault, through the aftermath of the camp at night afterwards, and that introspection between all of them, and are they doing the right thing? What should the approach be? And then the surprise attack. Retaliation of the orcs.
Okay, so it's that full action sequence before they get to Gondolin is where it begins.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It really needed to start there. It needed context. I couldn't just do we're off to Gondolin now.
Right.
Yeah. It needed this entire episode to really give it context and to let people understand, like, this is where the story is at this time. And as said, I loved Ilana's script, but I was when I read the script, and it says, and the eagles flew Huor and Hamdir to Gondolin, it was like, I'm sorry, that doesn't do justice for what needs to be shown.
Right.
So imagine Return of the King. We know the scene. Gandalf arrives with Pippin in Minas Tirith. We get them riding the horse up and up and up and up, and all, like, it's that kind of scene. And even though we've been to Gondolin before in the narrative, we haven't been to Gondolin this way, and the audience don't necessarily know that that's where this action is taking place. Like, they're just in this river valley. They got no idea that Gondolin. They may have no idea that Gondolin is just over those peaks there. So it really needed something impressive for the entrance into Gondolin. And just ends with them arriving, because that is once again, I'm sort of guided by the scripts, and how the scenes actually play out, and that scene actually ends when they land, and there's no dialogue. It sort of changes scene completely.
Okay, excellent. Very good. All right. Well, let's listen to the. There isn't a short for this one.
There was a short for that one. Once again, I found that people weren't getting up to, like, the crux of this one is the entrance to Gondolin, and the majority of viewers weren't getting up to this. So this is the entrance to Gondolin.
Okay.
For the short.
All right. And Nick, I have no idea why there are Cyrillic subtitles showing on YouTube. That is
It's
a
so
very
strange.
unexpected little twist there.
I know.
Uh, yeah, quite sure I didn't set YouTube to show that
No,
at
it
any
was
time.
it was showing for me too. It was
Yeah.
showing for me too.
Okay.
Very bizarre.
All right.
There's
got
been
no
an
idea.
interesting thing happening recently where YouTube is auto translating videos. It seems like everybody's videos, if based on your location. So if you live in Russia, an AI voice will come on and start to translate
Okay.
what the person is saying, and so which most of the time it works fine. But there are some science communicators on YouTube that I listen to, and they've complained that when they're speaking English, it's fine because it's like, oh yeah, that's English, I can do that, no problem, and so it translates that into whatever language. But whenever they use a scientific term, which is usually Latin or Greek,
Right.
it gets really confused and translates it as garbled English.
Right. Yeah.
So, good
I can
times.
imagine plenty of problems with that approach. All right. Well, okay. We'll let YouTube be its mysterious way. All right. Here's the full version. So we'll be placing the Gondolin theme there in its larger context within this piece here, Enter the Perilous Realm. Here we go. I think my very favorite part is the transition between the battle and the eagle flight. The way that the eagles come in, and you've got like the warring of like the quite peaceful, Manwë eagle theme, but the battle is still happening, right? You can still hear the action, and it's kind of like going back and forth. But then even after the battle sounds are totally done, there's still this sense of like, tension, to kind of what seems to reflect the uncertainty of the moment as they're being, swooped up by the eagles, high above. They're not in the battle anymore, but they're still uncertain about what's happening. And of course, it settles into a more resolutely peaceful place, right? And then the Gondolin theme begins after, more anticipation. And yet, but again, that transition into that I found really fascinating.
Yeah, there really needed to be a transition. I couldn't just go straight into the Gondolin theme. There needed to be that period of time where the audience feels what the young men are feeling. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand what's happening. They don't know where they're being taken to.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the eagle attack, the Manwë theme is in there, and there's there's those boom, boom, quite a lot to indicate that impact.
Yes.
But in there you get the ba-dum bum 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 ba ba, which is Manwë's theme, but in a really sort of strong way. I mean, Manwë, and so to indicate the strength of Manwë in this situation. But yeah, once they actually get out of that situation, they're no longer directly in danger, and the threats neutralized. It's sort of like, where are we? What's happening around us? And I wanted to give the same feeling as what Beren felt when he entered Doriath, because this is a similar situation. It's mortals entering fairy.
Yes.
So I used very similar musical technique. If you go back and listen to Beren and Luthien meet in the Forest of Doriath, you'll hear the same sort of thing. These little random notes everywhere by different instruments. And then you'll hear just bum, 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 which is the beginning of the Gondolin theme. And then occasionally you'll hear the bum, 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 like the middle bit of the Gondolin theme. So they're just played randomly, and if you know those themes, you might say, actually I recognize that little piece of music there. What's so it's all about dropping the hints before, and then that anticipation, that build, which I actually had in the Merith Adathad. I don't think I put the Merith Adathad image there. I must have missed. Yes, I did. The theme is born. So in the Merith Adathad, it had that transition where the music's building and building and building before it comes in the very grand Gondolin theme.
Yeah.
That's what was going on there. And as I said, a brief description in the script really didn't do justice to what I wanted this scene to show.
Yeah.
Well, it just goes to show you that, like, very often there's so much that the screenwriter is leaving in the hand. Like, it really is a work of trust. All of these sorts of projects, because you basically have to say, okay, I have taken this as far as I can go. Right. Now I'm going to hand it off to you, you composer, and you stunt coordinator, and you set designer, and ultimately you director. Right.
In order to say, like, so I wrote, and they came to Gondolin, and now make it awesome.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly. The Gondolin theme, I was thinking I totally see what you mean about the that initial entrance into Minas Tirith, that parallel, and I can easily imagine how different that will have to be. As you say, we've seen Gondolin before. Like, we've had Gondolin scenes before, and we've even had a new arrival to Gondolin looking at it with new eyes and being amazed when when Myglin showed up before. So like but it's a totally different experience again for humans to come in and do this, right? And so to imagine, like, I could imagine what we do, right, is when we showed Gondolin before, we'd show some like establishing shots from the outside, right, like those drone shots or helicopter shots, right, and then come in on a scene where we have whatever Turgan and Idril and others, right, participating. Myglin would get some more angles, right, but his focus is kind of peculiar, right? He's looking at Gondolin from a certain angle. What he's not doing is just gazing in awe at this, strange universe into which he finds himself. Again, like the crossing the threshold into fairy and finding yourself in a different world, right? Even Myglin wouldn't have had that experience exactly as different as it would have been for him. And so I'm imagining more like upward angles, kind of more like that. The music was inviting me to imagine, like, swooping in through the streets and gazing up at the towers and just marveling not only at, sculptures and art that they've never seen before, but just an entire kind of architecture that they never even imagined possible, right? I mean, just thinking about what to the eyes. Now, Hurin, Marie, would Hurin and Huor have been old enough to see, like, would they have been to, to Fingon's capital?
Mithrim?
Yeah, in Mithrim. Like, they're probably too young before they left, right?
Hurin may have, because if they left at the same time, if Hurin and Huor left at the same time, Hurin may have, but as a small child, his memory of it would not be
right. I mean, they've been living in Brethel.
Fresh.
They've been surrounded by huts. For, like, not to insult Brethel, but again, they would never even have imagined anything like Gondolin.
Brethel is built with wood,
yeah,
and Gondolin is built with stone. These are very different places,
yeah.
And the level of architecture, Turgan is head above the rest of the Noldor.
Yes,
at what he's doing here.
Yeah.
So yes, Brethel and Gondolin are opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
As to available architecture in Beleriand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the other things that I think I mean by a kind of architecture they've never seen, even if they have seen great stone, elvish stonework, basically, which they would, I mean, even if they've seen Tall Sirion from afar, they would have seen a tower, right?
Yeah.
But what they've never seen, because what exists almost nowhere else in Beleriand, is a city built for beauty and peace and not for defense at all, right? Surely if they associate tall elvish stonework, if they have any association with that, whether it be Tol Sirion only from a distance, or even perhaps childhood memories of Mithrim, they wouldn't have seen the kind of thing that they can do in Gondolin, because it was not built for defense, right? The defense of Gondolin is the mountains. It's not going to be a fortress. It's going to be a city built for beauty. And that would be totally unlike anything they will have seen.
Right. I mean, Gondolin is supposed to be a mirror of Tyrion.
Yeah.
And Tyrion is not
actually
built for defense.
One of the first things that you hear when they start that journey with the Eagles is the Valinor Ostinado. So that is the very first thing that started to give you a clue.
A clue that it's like you're headed back to Valinor. Yeah.
It is. I'll talk more on that later.
Yeah, that's great. So I assume that the Myron theme and the Melkor's Pride theme, which I don't think I was hearing those specifically, but those were again worked in with the orcs essentially during the battle and during the the ambush, the pre-ambush sequence.
and that's sort of the difference that I would make between what is a theme, which is like a tune, a piece of music that goes for a certain amount of time, and a leitmotif, which is just a few notes which indicate a theme. So they're really, Myron's was just a leitmotif, that bum ba da bum, bum ba da bum, and that was it. That was all you got. The Orcs again, Melkor once again, Melkor's Morgoth's Ostana triad, the bum bum bum, in amongst that. Once again, they're de-identified orcs, like but just to say they're acting on the orders of these people that we don't see. One thing that I wanted to say at the beginning, the House of Halla theme plays through all of that assault against the orcs. If you go and compare, listen back to the House of Halla, you'll find that video showed a progression because it was their entire journey.
Yes.
And each time I did the theme, it went just a little bit further, and then a little as they went into fought off the orcs at the barricade, and then when they went through Nundan Gortheb, and then when they took on to Fildo, each time the theme went further. This time, I've just sort of said, okay, these are hardened warriors. Let's go for it. And they do the whole lot really, really quickly. So you don't have to. There's not that gradual. It's like the Haladin know who they are. They have that confidence.
Right.
Even though it's a couple of generations back, they've still got that confidence.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Adrian De La Torre on YouTube was saying that your ability to weave together all these melodies you've written over the years is masterful. I've been listening to the podcast from episode 1 and I hear them all still, he says.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Okay. So next is the Laughter of Lalaith. So we're now jumping up ahead in the season a bit, right? Up to the birth of Lalaith. So is the Lalaith, is this again like designed to do a sequence, or is this primarily it's not a new theme for Lalaith, right? It's
no,
you're putting together themes. So I see right, I'm cheating. I see the evanescent lightsomeness. We talked about Lalaith in the context of the evanescent lightsomeness theme when you developed it.
We did.
Yeah,
we did, and that was where it came from. You had a much. You had very much a future talk a few seasons ago about this particular concept of the laughter and joy that fades too soon. So that's what it's to represent, and you were talking about a few different examples of where that would be used within. So yeah, I developed that theme a few years ago. But yes, this is straight from a script. I think is it episode 8. Or something like that. Yep.
It's 8. Yep.
So yeah, it's not the birth of Lalaith. It's that family scene where that really bonding time between Turin and Lalaith, in that lovely scene, has Huor and sorry, I'm blanking on his fiance's name. Rian, announcing their engagement, coming like that whole, we're engaged, we're going to get married. The conversation between Huron and Huor about, well, why delay? And the whole elvish question comes, is that scene? And then and also the scene where Morwen and Rian talk about what's happening and their lives and the baby that's no one's having a baby yet, I don't think. I don't remember. But yeah, just that sort of wholesome life that people leading at that time, and finishing with the men coming back to the family situation. And it's just I got some, I won't call it abuse. It was good-hearted abuse, but people were saying I was an evil man for producing this piece.
This is like the emotional pinnacle of the, as far as like if happy and cheerfulness is on the Y axis, right? This is the high point of the entire season. So why not why not at that moment, linger on that? So you can think of it, for people who think it's cruel, you can think of this as a way to, remain at this moment of beauty before, the story is going to careen onwards into death and destruction. But in this piece, we will linger in that at that moment of peace and happiness, which is fun. Which is fun. Yeah, Ilana is saying this scene will be performed at Mythmoot, the scene that you were describing.
Great.
And maybe we can use this music. Ilana, I'm thinking we almost have to find, I think we can find some ways to integrate the score into our reading. I think we can put that together.
There are going to be a few things that we're going to be doing that will be unusual, and I think that this very well will be one of them.
Yeah. If at last year's Mythmoot we had the first ever SilmFilm stunt performed, this year at Mythmoot perhaps we will have our first scored reading, at least partially scored reading. We've never done that before, so that'll be really cool. Okay, let us listen to the laughter of Lalaith. Oh, hang on. It would be better to listen to it with the sound on. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm going to start again. Let us listen to the laughter of Lalaith. It's toddler music. excellent. So I really, my favorite part is during so first of all, the toddler music was adorable. But secondly, the part in like the second half, like that sort of, in that last third there, when the part that is when Huor and Hurin are discussing whether or not to wait, right? What I really liked about that is you could feel that the happy, beautiful, peaceful, music was continuing. It didn't shift, like it wasn't transitioning into something like darker or sad or more, but it was like sadness and solemnity were like weighing it down, right? Like you could see, it was the same music, but it was being like, it was almost like it was being threatened. Like, are you going to let this, and then it resumed, right? And then it returned. Then it, so when Huor agrees, right, that no, we'll not try to do the Elvish way, right? And wait, not get married because it's going to be time of war soon. We'll just embrace being happy now. The weight is lifted from the music, and the happy theme resumes and continues. I thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah, yeah. That bit was actually a part of the original House of Hador theme. I did a few like variations of the main theme, and instead of going up, this one goes down. Sort of, it's the same. It's the same timing. It's the same timing and the same sorts of leaps of notes, and the same sort of chord progression. So it fits in very well. But one thing that I sort of wanted to point out, whenever in the past I've dealt with what I call the human elf dichotomy, I've introduced the Lydian mode, which is everyone knows it from E.T. the Extraterrestrial, where the first two chords progress up a major chord and it goes up one tone to another major chord. Now that's really unusual and adds a certain lightness to it, and I've been using that to identify the elf side of that dichotomy. So when Huor is saying, "Oh, the elves don't do it this. The elves do it this way. I'm inclined to follow the elves on this." I've shifted the music into that mode as well, so it has those sort of two chords. Which is sort of quite unusual. You'd usually get, if you follow a major progression up, it sort of goes major minor, and that feels natural. But that major is unusual. So I wanted to put that in there to highlight that.
That is cool.
That was the only sort of different bit that what you won't hear in the House of Hador theme.
And I was suspecting that we were getting some of the Gift of Iluvatar mingled in there.
Yes, so the gift of there's a little piece, as you see on my PowerPoint there, the little piece of the gift of Iluvatar. So it's not actually the gift of Iluvatar, but it's actually a little counter melody which I wrote, which I called the Good Life. And it was to really make a contrast about, well, we know that men are destined to die, but there's good times in there as well. So that's what this piece was really to try and emphasize. And it wasn't that comparison with elves. It was just, this is people living the good life. And I used that piece when Morwen and Rian were having their in-depth discussion. And I think I channeled a bit of John Barry into there, with there's a particular technique that he uses, and you'll see it right across scores like Dancing with Wolves, or Out of Africa, where in the bass they'll do this, sort of go that 1 5 and then the third above. And that gives it a real sort of prairie, homely feel to it. So you'll hear that in the bass during that section there, which I think makes it particularly sweet.
Gotta miss John Barry. Also, there's a movie called Sarah Plain and Tall, which also uses that, I believe. Glenn Close is in it. I don't imagine that she was thrilled to death when her agent told her that she was playing the titular character of that movie.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Right.
So the one thing in our previous session, where we talked about what music we wanted to hear this season, one thing that we discussed was after the brothers and Hamdir go to Gondolin, how does that change their music? So you'll see there, one of the themes I've used is the Valinor theme. So
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
What Huor has taken away from Gondolin is the Valinor ostinato.
Ah, I see. Nice.
That's the part. That's the part.
Okay.
So not an actual theme. So I can just put that over what. So he's still got the House of Hador theme, and that's and in that section there, when he first arrives with Rian, you hear that ostinato first, but then you just hear the House of Hador theme. But I put it with a trumpet to give it that sort of real grand, stately feel. I mean, he's almost progressed to be an elf.
Yes. No, but
through his experience.
That is such a fascinating little piece of adaptation, Phil, in its own right there, right? That basically, instead of imagining, because I mean, obviously we did a lot with that, and I'm thinking especially of Alana's work on this in her scripts, a lot of work with Hurin's like elfification, right? His kind of like, going native in Gondolin and really bringing that back with him. But what you're suggesting, like the adaptation that the music is doing right there, is telling us that no, what has happened here is not just Hurin like imitating elves or Hurin falling in love with elvish things. It is Hurin through Gondolin getting a glimpse of the West itself, right? It's him being influenced through Gondolin by Valinor. That is what really changes him, right? And that, I think, is a gorgeous piece of adaptation to kind of layer into the music and imply that it's a perfect example of those kinds of things, Phil, that you've pointed out many times before that Howard Shore is doing or Bear McCreary is doing, right? This kind of like really subtle point that is being made, this sort of, how this one overlay is being made into the, their theme at these particular points is, is telling you something about that character or about that story, which the story itself doesn't explicitly say, right? And I think that's a really gorgeous way to do that.
Yeah, there's a real circular story going on there that's going to continue.
And it's unique because it's not the House of Bayor searching for the light in the West.
Yeah.
Like, who are finding Gondolin and figuring out what Gondolin is an image of is its own unique story. So it's nice that the music is unique as well.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, the way that it picks up on that, right? The searching for the light in the West was a major theme there in season 6 or season 5 rather, when we first got the humans. And there's this like that little musical hint like, hey, Hurin found it. or sorry, Huor found it, right? Huor found it. That the House of Bayor never actually found the light in the West, really, right? But Huor has actually caught a glimpse, perhaps more than any human we've seen. Huor has caught the glimpse of the light in the West that everybody else was looking for. I think that is, and of course, such a perfect anticipation, for the grandfather of Beorendil, right? To be to have that, we have the first hint of the Valinorian overlay, right? To anticipate, not only looking backwards again through Gondolin, but looking ahead to his grandson. I think it's just gorgeous. And it's phenomenal. Awesome. Well, that is very good. And although it is melancholy to think about Lalaith and the beautiful passages that are imagining Lalaith and Turin playing together, I think it is, it in a way almost does a disservice. Like that very understandable desire to be like, oh, I can't bear to think about it because it's too sad to imagine the two children happy together, knowing what is going to happen, not only immediately with Lalaith's death, but down the road with Turin, right?
Yep.
It's very tempting to have that kind of reaction, but I think it does a disservice to the beauty of that story, not to refuse to linger even for a moment, even for 5 minutes and 30 and 8 seconds on that moment of peace and happiness, just because that unnumbered tears are coming very soon, right? So it's very worth doing. I'm glad you did that one. Awesome.
When Alana does the death of Lalaith, I might do an accompanying piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be fun to get a piece on the death of Lalaith. Cool. Let me do a quick. All right. Pretty sure. Yes, I'm getting like all the ads now, so I'm just kind of going through those. So next we get the city and people of Sooth Berdine.
Yes, new theme. New theme. The first one of the season, and it took me a little while of working with it. So this one is not a scene from the scripts. It's really so the image is really just an amalgam of different parts of Galadriel's journey into over the Blue Mountains. Into the east. Usually we say where I am, we say over the Blue Mountains into the west.
Right.
Where I live in the Blue Mountains.
Your Blue Mountains, yes, exactly.
Blue Mountains.
My Blue Mountains also to the west.
Yes. So yes, there's no overarching story being told here. It's just this is music that we would hear when Galadriel is on her journey. This is music that we would hear when she arrives at the city. There's a clear statement of the new theme when we actually get to the city, and there are a few scenes that I've sort of grabbed from the scripts to the best of my ability, and then the second section is really about the people of Bor, and shows them as chariot drivers. So really tries to get across the sort of increase in action with Bor and his people. I'll talk about the influences if people want to listen. I sort of had specific instructions from Nick on this one. He wanted something Hans Zimmerish,
I was
sort of 1990s.
detecting a Hans Zimmer kind of motif here.
Yeah, well, the trick with Hans Zimmer is that you throw thematic material out the window completely, and you just do something which sort of feels like he's all to do with how like the emotion of how things feel. He's very effective at that, but very little thematic material in there at all. So you'll hear just a few leitmotifs and hints of themes in the first part. Once the themes introduced, sort of departs from that, but really in the end bit, I think I channeled a bit of Ennio Morricone, like the spaghetti western type music, the whole, and I think I worked out his trick to get that particular sound, which we can talk about afterwards.
Awesome. All right, let's have a listen, and I'll remember to unmute it first this time. I'm muting it to lose the commercials, of course, but then last time I forgot to unmute it afterwards. All right, here we go. so we get a little glimpse of how the Bree music is going to sound, and down with the distant memory of Sooth Baradine behind it.
Exactly. So yes, I had to. I just felt the need to sort of. Well, that's what I have done in the past. I've anchored it. To other things. And Bear McCreary's doing exactly the same thing, but he's got copyright that he has to be careful of.
Right.
At this stage, I don't have to be careful of copyright.
It's
So
been one of the beauties of SilmFilm from the beginning.
it has. But yes, yeah. So that sort of run up of notes. That run up of notes that we heard all the way through the Sooth Baradine theme is a major part of the Bree theme. We don't get much of Bree theme in the Fellowship of the Ring. And then the chords after that, I use those a lot. Those chords, that bum bum bum. So I really wanted to anchor it into, and it's sort of like what we get in Bree is the leftover fragments of this very grand theme that when it was an empire. So that was what I wanted to do. But then I had this problem, because in amongst the middle of that, it was this. I had this, and everyone's going to say, "Nah, that's just Game of Thrones," and it's like, oh my. So I had to make the bit where it went bum bum butter, when it did that a lot. I really had to limit that, because I knew that was going to be the response. Everyone was just going to say, "You've just ripped off the Game of Thrones theme."
Right.
That did not occur to me even once.
It didn't to me
job
either.
well done.
Yeah.
One of the things, so what the Sooth Baradine represent in our story, especially at this point, right, is what humans are capable of without the elves, right? And so I love this. There's a sense of grandeur there, that Galadriel has not picked up from any human settlement she's been to thus far, but it's not perfect. Like, there's undertones there that kind of like this is cool and this is exciting. It's messy sometimes. Like, we're messy, right? And I thought that I definitely heard some little Western elements, like some like da da da, like if you had not mentioned them before, I may not have picked up on them, because my ear's not that good, but I definitely get here, and I think that adds an air of wistfulness to it, which is what the Old West is all about. Like, there's a sense in the when we Americans think about the Old West, like, there's so much cool stuff that we associate with that, but it's very messy.
Yes.
And I think that gave that wistfulness to the Sooth Baradine, and I couldn't help but find myself being like, now I really need the Sooth Baradine faction in Civilization that I can play, so I can hear this as the background music. I love the drum beats association with the charioteers.
The chariots, yeah, I love the percussion there as well. That's one of my favorite parts.
And one of the interesting things about the percussion is that I started to lay down just a repeating percussion track each bar. And when I listened to it, it's sort of like, oh no, that's not right at all. So what you'll find is that that beat changes, like it's in about a 4 different beat rotation, and the strings are going at a different timing to the drums as well, which are taiko drums, which are very cool, and everyone's using taiko drums at the moment.
Yes.
But I really wanted to get across that this is an agile force.
Yes.
They can respond at any moment, and we saw that during the script, in those scenes with Bor and Galadriel. It was like, oh, change of plan, boom, we're doing this instead. So it really had to have that agility to it.
We're now going to engage in this battle that's like half a day's march.
Right.
That's right. Exactly right. So that was one feature that sort of, I think, adds to the excitement and that uncertainty with that theme.
Yeah. And you can feel them gearing up and getting ready to go at that time. Like it feels very martial, which is 100% appropriate. I think the way that you've layered the continuation of the leitmotif alongside that percussion, it reminds us of the sense of the chariots of Bor they're not the same group of people, right? They're parallel with each other, but they are not. They are in fact different
people. Yeah.
Yep.
No, that
but
is.
They did share the same theme. We talked about that as well. They didn't need a different theme, but they need a different treatment and a different way for us to understand them being different. So, another thing I might point out is that this is a human civilization, and human civilizations start with that 1-5 leap.
Yeah.
Right. So their theme starts the same way. Yep. Has that 1-5 leap like all the other human themes.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so I can already tell you in advance, one of the really fun things that's going to be happening in season 8 with it, because we're gonna need a retreatment of the Sooth theme.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. When we get the Easterlings ruling Dorloman, and the situation there of them now actively as oppressors, but also as oppressed, right? Is going to be, so we'll talk about it more when we get to the music prep episode in season 8, but I can already tell you that is definitely a thing that I think we're going to want for season 8 is, and I was already thinking about it, especially when you transition to Bree at the end, thinking about like, well, ways in which it's going to need to be kind of modulated and changed. We're going to get that immediately when we get the new the new situation for the Sooth Baradin, with Brala and Lorgan in Dorloman. So anyway. So that's just a little preview of a bold prediction about one of the things we're definitely going to be interested in for season 8, I think. Okay, cool. Well, next up is the Lament for Azaghal. One of the rarer, I will certainly say rarer than in season 6, but that's no great mastery of diegetic music, right? We this is in this, in the action that is described here, this is one of the most famous musical moments, right? Singing moments in the description of the narrative of the dwarves singing as they bear off the body of Azaghal. So really glad that you are hitting on this moment, because it is one of those moments in this whole part of the story that is most closely associated with music, I think, in Silmarillion readers. So,
Yep. And new tune for this one. Just a word so people understand. I had grand plans of doing like the battle between the dwarves and Glaurung, leading into that, but there were lots of time pressures. So what you'll see is a montage at the very beginning which just shows like glimpses of what has gone before and led to this part where they're grieving for their king. So just so people understand it, hopefully if you've read the script, you might actually recognize some of the images there, because they are very specific to that script, and they were done by the gentleman Charlie, who helped me with some of the other ones as well.
Nice. All right.
This is the first time I'm hearing this one, by the way. I haven't even
Oh,
had
okay.
time to listen to this one.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Let's hear it together. Excellent. Excellent. I really love how it ends, not with just a repetition of his name, or even a repetition, but just the repetition of like loved. You know, he keeps coming back to that word loved, which I think is it's a beautiful touch at the end.
That is a side of the dwarves that we don't see depicted very often at all. And I think that one of the uncharacteristic triumphs of the Hobbit films was the demonstration of the dwarves' love for Thorin, particularly in Dwalin and Balin. But yeah, I'm happy that we also got a share of that expression of dwarvish love.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Ilana says fantastically alien sounding. She was right when the dwarf vocals came in. Yeah.
Well, Nick set me a really difficult task, because the only description that he gave it in the script was terrifying.
Yes.
Right.
So it couldn't really be sad, because sad isn't terrifying.
Right.
So what I was really trying to channel there was, they're really angry. They're really angry that they have lost their king in his prime. And as discussed in your sessions, like they were planning on him being around for a long time to come.
Yes.
So that's really what I've tried to channel, that anger, that grief associated with that anger. So that's why there's lots of staccato bits in there, like we cut off words really quickly, and sort of in the middle of those sort of
yeah, yeah,
at the end there, to get across the feeling. So that was what I'm trying to do. Hopefully I succeeded.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great. Yes, as you say, the anger, the cadence of it, I thought was really good. It's not the kind of lament that you would, it's not like a funeral lament, like what you would sing at a funeral. Like there was that sense of movement, like it sounded like a marching song, like a marching dirge rather than just a, someone wouldn't sing this solo at a funeral, right? This is for them to be, marching while they were singing it, I think came across with the cadence and the feel of it, that kind of steady plodding hammering rhythm.
You don't want this sung at your funerals? Is that what I'm hearing you saying, Corey?
Well, I mean, you look. I'm saying I'm not requesting it. But
I'm not offended. Not offended.
But there would be stages. There could be stages. Like with earlier on.
7 stages of grief. Yeah. This is the very first stage.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. It's a good characterization of the dwarves there.
And there's only percussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's purely percussion there. There's no other instruments, because if it is diegetic, it's not like Thorin's party in Bilbo's parlour where they all whip out their musical instruments.
The full orchestra, yeah.
No, they're on the battlefield with their siege engines, and they've only got what is to hand. So there's lots of banging of spears on wood and metal, and axes on metal. So that's what I tried to capture with the accompaniment.
Right. Oh, excellent. All right. Well, that brings us towards the end. Star Shall Rise. So this is music for what, like the final conversation between? Is this when in the story are you imagining this beginning?
This is the scene directly from Nick's script, episode 13, where Hurin and Huor and the men of Dor Loman arrive at the earthworks and meet Turgon and the remaining Gondolindrum, and they're about to leave. So it's that scene. I was going to continue it, and then I thought no, because that scene is cut by. It then goes to Bor's death scene with Galadriel, and then it goes to Maedhros and his wrap up before it actually comes back to the last stand. So in the end I said, no, they deserve 2 separate pieces of music. I mean, I could very well go and do Bor's death scene with Galadriel as well.
Yes.
But that's the context, and once again it contains the dialogue from the script.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Tell me about the central, the prophecy moment, right? From you and from me, a star shall arise. Tell me more about that, because that's clearly such an important. You could hear a bunch of things happening there, right? And it's obviously there's so much weight on that moment, not only because of, so many things coming together from this season and, in those, for this is the final great moment of Huor's character, right? But of course it's also in anticipation of, it's the prophecy and anticipation of Eärendil to come. And so musically speaking, right, it's something that's going to need to carry over pretty significantly as we move forward. So tell me more about that moment.
Okay. So it led with a sad rendition of the Gondolin theme, and then when Huor steps forward, once again we hear that Valinor ostinato. That was with the harp. So that goes throughout his whole speech in the background. But then we get this really sort of jaunty bum 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 bum. That's played on a piccolo, very very high, and I added a whole lot of reverb to it, so it sounded very sort of ghostly. Right. That was what I wanted to get across there. Now, if you have a look at the themes that I've used there, the pictures, I pulled a little thing that I wrote for the hiding of Valinor, which was not necessarily written in and thought of by you guys in your development of that storyline, but one that Tolkien put in when he described the darkening of Valinor. He described of the hope that will come. Like the ban of the Valar is that elves and men will not be able to come to Valinor ever again until like the chosen person appears in the world. And I had a little scene with Vaire weaving a tapestry which was just of a star.
Right.
And that was where I first dropped. That's the only time where I dropped that theme. Which is called Wingalot.
Right. Excellent. So, in fact, you've been planning for this moment for like 7 years, basically.
I have.
Exactly. That is phenomenal. Because that was what, season 2 was the hiding of Valinor?
3? End of season 3.
End of season 3. Right. End of season 3. Right. End of season 3.
Yeah. I dropped it there, and I knew that I would be able to. And so I've actually written the whole theme in terms of melody and chord progression, so I know where it's going. But that's just sort of the first bit, the first little tease of that particular theme. And once again, this is where we see the circular story of the elves coming out of Valinor. Turgon establishing Gondolin in memory of Valinor, the Hurin Huor coming to Gondolin, him taking that away into the world. He's now going to pass that on to Tuor, so that Valinor ostinato is going to follow Tuor as well, even though he never knew his father.
I was suspecting that would be the case.
He's going to inherit that. It's going to come back, be grander in Gondolin, and eventually, like, that'll be a central point of Eärendil when he's finally born.
Absolutely.
So I love that theme has just sort of been, just like a baton, has been passed on to each person, and eventually it's going to come right back to Valinor with Eärendil.
Yeah. No, just the way that begins almost as this like this influencer, almost in a positive way, of course, like a kind of infection that Hurin has caught, right, and that he hands down and blossoms, in his son and grandson. I think that's just is so cool.
Cool. I'm thinking of doing that as a little short as well.
Yeah.
Just so that people get that, like that's the crux of that particular.
Absolutely. Now you could feel everything coming together in that moment. That was really the pinnacle, and a marvelous deployment of the purpose theme there.
Yes.
Hurin
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
I'm glad you picked that up. As soon as I saw purpose with a capital P, I thought, okay,
It's like, hey,
there's my cue.
we, we are prepared against a day just such as this, that we would need that theme. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Season 2 theme that was.
That's it. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. And look, I love that, like the Gondolin theme. We never heard it in that way before, and we're gonna hear it again like that in the Fall of Gondolin, and the House of Hador theme when he gives the order to Otar to take the horses, once again in a sort of that martial way that we haven't really heard before, but everybody can sort of feel that everything's building.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I hadn't thought about it in that way, but the way in which this does give us an opportunity. I mean, I was thinking about how this gives us an opportunity to anticipate Eärendil. What I wasn't thinking about was the ways in which this gives us a brief moment musically to anticipate the fall of Gondolin as well, with the combination of Gondolin themes and in this moment of tragedy and destruction. And it's Gondolin, it is not this day that Gondolin will fall, right? But we do get a taste and a foretaste of the destruction of Gondolin here, and so beginning to hint at that alteration of the Gondolin theme in order to kind of point in that direction, I think is great.
Yeah, the this day language was something that was tough to keep out of the script for those episodes, considering that Days Shall Come Again was definitely a big
yes.
There was a lot of discussion about day and what day it was and all that good stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can see the natural temptation to fall into certain grooves there. Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. So the last piece that you wanted to share was the one that's not quite finished, right?
Exactly.
The Aure and Tulava one. So this is obviously the culmination. Is this designed to be like the whole end of the last episode?
Yes, and so what you'll find with the video is that I've incorporated the Northern Spirit that Nick requested. Hopefully it's what you were thinking of. We can talk about that after. But it's sort of up to the final up until sort of Huor and Hurin on their own, and Huor's death. So I really haven't, because once we get to that bit, that's really where the Estelle theme is going to come in. So I've been working on that, and what I might do, I've actually got images up there, so if you want to sort of leave it going after the music stops, and I'll just play on the piano what it's likely to be. I can't guarantee that it's going to sync up, but at least you can then see what sort of images are going to come up and accompany this particular music. And what I've tried to do as well in the images is incorporate your feedback on that final episode, and put in those flashes to those other scenes in the middle of Hurin fighting, in the middle of Hurin's last stand. So he's standing, it flashes to the tomb of Ulfang, then comes back to Hurin, then it flashes to Gondolin, then comes back. So that's incorporating all of those scenes into this final stretch, so the music doesn't have to change. And in a way, a lot of those scenes are talking about that hope, that Estelle hope.
Right. Excellent. All right. Well, let's listen.
Yeah, just stop it where you need to. Something along those lines.
Hmm.
Sorry, should have given a gore warning.
Oh. Well.
If you want to, you can just sort of fast forward through.
Yeah, that's okay. I was saying anybody who, shows up to a
Battle of Unnumbered
Tears podcast without expecting any blood and sorrow is probably
the image of Otar
right
crossing over the mountains.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. There was when they're like making their final stand, there was a bit like not Hurin in particular. There was a bit of do you hear the people sing? Which I found very appropriate.
Manning the barricades, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I could hear I could actually, what I was actually hearing was the reprisal at the very end of the show, where it's like, in the valley of the Lord, they were bought away the sword, and that's what I was hearing for a second there, but it gives that same feeling of like
yes, and that was definitely on my mind.
Hey everyone, big heads up.
I've just recently done a version for my choir to sing, and prepared music for all them of that exact scene, where they're not angry men, but it's like they're all dead at that point, and singing Beyond the Grave. So one thing I don't know whether I'll end up with that, but what I was sort of aiming for was it just had like some notes repeating to sort of again and again just repeating that again and again
inevitability.
And again. Yeah, so that's right.
And inevitability but persistence as well. Yes. That was and that was the main thing. I was going to say that was my favorite part. I loved the repetitiveness of like how it kept repeating the same thing with variations, and it wasn't just the same thing again and again, but it was it kept striking the same notes and the same rhythms, and it gave that sense, I think, and you were referring to my comments on the end of episode 13. I think, Nick, that if I had read the script with that score playing in the background, I might have felt a little bit differently. That is, it conveys much more clearly the length. Right. Yes. I mean, one of my biggest problems was like the final stand of Hurin felt too brief. Right. It would feel much less brief with that music. Yes. I mean, that music really conveys the continuous short scale repetition, like the passage of time and I thought that was, just the very, very gradual descent down into, increasing sorrow, as it went through. Anyway, I thought that was just a phenomenal effect that would really, really convey that moment, especially as we're going in. Because, I mean, as I was saying in the episode, this is one of those things that you can't do anywhere, like in art. Like you can't capture exactly the experience of this horrible scene that goes on and on and on forever and seems like it would never end. Like you would never want to actually capture that to make people experience it, right? Yes. So watching Hurin fight for, however long it is, 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, right before he's finally taken. We can't subject people to anything like an approximation of that real experience. And so, but that, I thought that music really captured the, both, Nick, as you said, the inevitability of it, but the persistence through it. I thought that was really wonderful.
Yeah. this goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the collaborative nature of film, where it's not like an artist who does a painting, nor even someone writes a book or someone writes a piece of music. You know, it is all these stops along the way that get you to, you know, the screenwriter hands that script over, and now there's actors and and directors and composers and carpenters, like there's this huge apparatus that gets put into motion, and there is a huge act of faith and humility that's involved, just playing your individual part in that production, which I think I've been appreciating more and more as I've learned more things about that process. So.
Well, it's collaborative.
Exactly.
Yeah. The Men of Dolomon's Last Stand, sort of, that needed a good. I was sort of reading, trying to find the cue for the Northern Spirit in the script, but look, I just went for it because we talked about it, and I think it was really important to make it. It's not just about Hurin and Huor. It's about those men. Like none of them came. It's like the story of 300 all over. It is the story of 300.
Yeah. It is. It is.
And their sacrifice needed a reasonable amount of time to show that on screen, so that they're gone, then it's just Hurin and Huor, and then it's just Hurin. Look, it's been that was great. So rather than having like a theme for Estelle, is still something that's very, very amorphous and difficult for me to grasp onto. I think this really captures the feeling of this moment of the story, and I don't know whether it will become the final Estelle musical theme or not. Possibly some elements out of it will go towards it.
Because it's important that, like, Huor has kind of latched on to the Estelle of the situation, and Hurin is taking that up, right? Even as we're seeing the scene play out. But the men around them, they are the ones who are, laughing, I shall die, right? Because they're not involved in this philosophical discussion. Are some of them thinking along these lines? Maybe. I don't know. We don't get to ask that question. And I think it's going to be interesting because as this season plays out, you're going to see a lot of these guys popping up, even if they don't have speaking roles. They, those same people are going to be around Hurin all the way through. And now you're going to be watching these guys who have never gotten the chance to speak a word dying on camera. And I think that's going to be extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to write some words to that Northern Spirit tune there, I'm happy to take it on board.
Yeah, that is awesome. So that was lovely. I look forward to hearing that in full when you get a chance to completely finish that. And I agree, it would be really neat to have some lyrics there with the Northern Spirit bit of that.
And the early and I'll put the script through the whole of the first part of the video as well. So because there's stuff going on between Hurin and Huor, that we just got images for that time.
Yeah,
there are several of these pieces for sure. I'm gonna find a way to use it Myth Moot for sure.
Right.
Between the Lalaith piece and. Honestly, there are ways that I can work in most of this, so I think that's all good.
Yep. No, I think we can build some stuff. That's going to be awesome. Very cool. Well, Phil, thank you so much as always for all of your work here. This is always such a treat at the end to hear, and of course, The reason we always save you for the very end is not only because this is spectacularly fun, but also out of mercy to you to give you as much time as possible to work on it. So thank you so much for everything that you have been done for this. We were reflecting at the beginning about how long we've been going on here. And of course, you've been with us from the beginning and have composed now such a wonderful corpus of music for SilmFilm. And as people have been observing, the way that all of that music continues to live and to grow through all of these, new permutations and new developments as the story goes on is so rich and delightful to see. So it was enough fun in the early seasons when we were just getting tons of new themes all the time, right? And imagining, kind of connecting many of these people or these concepts to sort of musical ideas. The ways now in which, those things are all coming together to sort of speak this coherent language and feeding so directly into the story is really delightful. So thanks again so much, Phil, for all that you've done here.
I'm loving it, and I'm here for the long haul. And as I said before, look, I'm sort of the musical director. Happy to get people to get input from people and suggestions. We've done a whole lot of stuff that other people have done. As you can see, there are 492 subscribers. I remember the episode that we did where I got my 100th subscriber.
Yes.
So I'd love to get my 500th subscriber after today's session.
That's right.
So and what I'm actually building towards is having like a corpus of music, which can just be listened to because it's music and music in its own right.
Right.
So that's why I've arranged them in playlists for each season, and you can just hit play season 1, and there you go. And I will over time make them tighten them up as my skills and my tools have improved. I will tighten up the back catalogue.
Yeah, I have often dreamed about having time to go back to my pilot script, my 25-page pilot script, and turning it into a full-on episode of television. I feel you there for sure.
I know. I still remember that scene of Eurybius going to visit Estelle's mother.
Yes.
In Rivendell.
Yes. Oh yeah, the one that I animated. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, it has been a delightful journey. So thank you, Phil. Thank you to the whole team, Nick and Marie, for all the work that you've done, both on the show and behind the scenes to make everything possible. Marie, I know with, putting together the PowerPoints and everything else that you do, really, really grateful for all of that work. And we have come to the end of season 7, and that means we're going to have a little bit of a hiatus. We're going to have a little bit of break and recuperation and preparation for season 8. The plan at this point, we're not sure of the precise date, but the plan at this point is in September. We'll begin season 8 in September. So we'll have a little summer break here. We'll have our final sort of celebration of season 7 at Mythmoot next week. I say, don't forget to join us for that. You can still join us through Moot Hub. That is through our remote participation, and you'll be able to see. And hopefully here, I'm going to try to see if I can get, when we get music, if we can pipe that through to the Zoom listeners as well, so that they can hear that.
That shouldn't be all that difficult.
I think we should be able to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, and as Alana said, Alana is recruiting here. She's think about participating. If you want to read a part in our SilmFilm little unofficial production at Mythmoot. So, and then after that, little hiatus, and we will come back to season 7 where everything is bright and cheerful again, fortunately. So
season
8. Season 8. Yeah, exactly. 8. That's what we're moving on to because it comes after 7. So In season 8, we're going to be doing bright and cheerful things, like
Oh, yes.
the youth of Turin and the first part of the Turin Bar story.
I'll tell you, I'm pretty sure that season 8 is going to be more cheery than season 9.
I think you're right. I think season 9.
I can almost guarantee it.
I agree. We'll have some good times in season 8. We'll get lots of
certainly less cringeworthy.
We'll get lots of Beleg in season 8. So there we go.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. Things to look forward to.
Things to look forward to. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And we will see folks again soon in September. Stay tuned. Stay tuned to Signum social media channels, and if you're a member of our Signum Discord, we'll be announcing it there as well, I'm sure. And we will see you guys in a couple months for the beginning of season 8. Thanks everybody. I will say as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.